Hello everyone, and welcome to another Leetcode video. Today we're looking at Identify the Largest Outlier in an Array, which was question 2 in a weekly contest for 26. So this question reads that we're given an integer array nums. This array contains n elements, and exactly n minus 2 of those elements are considered special numbers. So for the two remaining elements that are not special, one of them is equal to the sum of all the special numbers, and the other is an outlier. So we'll look at an example and may make a bit more sense. An outlier is defined as a number that is neither one of the original special numbers nor the elements representing the sum of those numbers. So we want to find the largest potential outlier that we can have in nums. So looking at this example, we see that our output is 10 because 10 is the largest and only outlier in this case. So the explanation is that 2 and 3 are special numbers, so the sum of those is 5. We have an other element equal to that sum here, this 5, and then 10 would be our outlier. So 2 and 3, special numbers. This is another number that's equal to the sum of our special numbers, and then 10 is the outlier. Let's look a bit closer at this example. So in this case, we already know that 10 is our outlier. But if we didn't know, how would we solve this? Well, let's use this example and try to work backwards and get the intuition. So here, the sum of all these elements is 20. What would happen if we removed our outlier? Say this 10 was now gone. Well, now we remove 10 from that, so our sum is 10. So how does this help us? So let's look at our remaining elements here. We have a 2, a 3, and a 5. We know that one of these here has to be equal to the sum of the rest of the elements. So remember, we have some special numbers, and then we have another that is equal to the sum of special, right? So in this case, we see that this is true. We could use 2 and 3 as our special numbers, and then 5 is equal to that sum here. So really what we're doing here is we have to basically break this array into two parts essentially. So we're breaking off our special numbers here, and then we have this one other element that's equal to our sum. So how does this tie into this 10? Well, you'll see that this section and this section have the same sum. So whatever sum we have after we remove the outlier has to be divisible by 2. You'll see we have 10 here, and we have two sections where our sum is 5. So know that our sum mod 2 must equal 0. So this is our first condition that we have to satisfy here. So it's possible this condition may be satisfied in other cases, but we have to make sure also that this other condition is met, where this one value is equal to the rest of these. And this is not always going to be the case just if our sum is divisible by 2, right? So how do we actually check this and see? Well, we know that if this one element has to be equal to the sum of the rest of these, we have to have one element which is equal to the sum divided by 2, right? So if, for example, our sum is 10, we have to have a 5 in here because we know that this 5 has to be equal to every other element in there. And we know that if we're breaking it in half, then this 5 has to be present. So we could also have a hash map here where we keep track of all the elements that we have. And if at any point we look for this value and see that it's in there, we know that our other condition is true. Right, so that's our other condition. We have to check that whatever sum we have divided by 2 is actually going to be in our array after we remove the outlier. So really what we're going to do is just going to do this process for every element. We're going to say try 2 first, treat it as an outlier, and then check these two conditions on our remaining sum. If it is true, then we found a potential outlier that we can record. And we're just going to do this for every single element, and we're going to record this at the end, our maximum value, and just return that. So our time complexity here is going to be O of n. You might think this is going to be a complicated procedure where you have to do some nested loops to look for sums and these divisible values, but you'll see it's actually pretty simple. We're just going to do this in O of n time by using some data structures to keep track of what we're currently looking at. Let's look at the code and see exactly how this works. So the first thing I do is set up a couple data structures. I'm just going to have my total sum for the entire array. And this includes every element. And what we're going to do is, as we try each outlier, subtract that value out, look at our conditions, and then add it back in. We're also going to have the counts of all of our elements. And we're going to use this to make sure that any element that we need to have is currently present in the array. Also, our outlier is just our maximum outlier. We're going to record the maximum value here and then return it at the end. So we're going to try each number as our outlier. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove that essentially from the array and then also subtract it from whatever sum we're looking at. So then we check our condition. So if our total sum mod 2 equals 0, so our sum is divisible by 2, and if that number, the divisible by 2, half of that sum, is in our counts, then we know that we found a potential outlier. So we're going to record that and just keep track of the max value. Then at the end, we want to undo trying this element, right? So we're going to add the count back in and then also add that number back to our total sum. Then at the end, we're just going to return that maximum outlier that we found. So let's submit and make sure that it works. And it does work. So hopefully this is helpful and it made sense. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And thank you for watching.